Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast. I'm Kyle. I'm here with Mike and David and Zach. It's Monday. How you guys doing?
There you go. Asking questions again, Kyle. I don't know
what I do. I ask questions.
I feel like you're like, hey, how you guys doing? And then you look straight at me in the video chat and you're like, I know he hates it when I ask this question.
All right. So for the record, for everyone listening, like 4 episodes ago, maybe 5 at this point, I lost track of time. Dash has said to Kyle, hey, can we do a different kind of opener rather than you saying, how are you guys doing? Because it's just the same answer every week. And it's true. The answer is pretty much the same every week. But I have to admit with Mike here that I think Kyle's starting to do it on purpose and is just throwing eye daggers at Mike when he asks this question. Because he knows what he's doing, but he's going to act like he doesn't know what he's doing. But he definitely is doing it on purpose. Don't you dare lie to me, Kyle. I know it.
I just want to know. I mean, this is when we hang out. I haven't talked to you guys in like 10 minutes.
We've literally been having a conversation for the past 4 hours.
No. Yeah. It's all right. So we're gonna talk about GenCon today because that's a thing. We're going to do some hobby talk. Probably going to be a somewhat lengthy hobby section. There's a list of fun topics here. And then we're going to talk a little bit, some tactics about knowing your list and also knowing your opponent's list and what to do if you don't know anything about your opponent's list. So let's hit housekeeping first and news.
Welcome to In the News.
So GenCon Online is going to be a thing. Of course, the physical GenCon convention was canceled, but there's going to be an online thing, and there's also going to be a Legion tournament that is online. So David, do you want to talk about that?
Yes, we are organizing. That is we as in the 5th Trooper, and of course us as a subset of the 5th Trooper, are organizing a online Legion tournament for GenCon Online that's going to be done on TTS on Saturday, August 1st. It'll be starting roughly around 10 a.m. Eastern time to allow the West Coasters to get up early and come join us. There is a free event, free to sign up. It's already live, so if you haven't gotten your ticket through GenCon, please go get one as soon as possible. It's a 64-person tournament. We're going to do 3 rounds on TTS, and we're going to cut to a top 8 for a day 2. And so for the round robin portion, you'll need to go undefeated to get into the cut. In terms of unit legality, we are trying to emulate a real life tournament situation as much as possible. So I think there are no ARC troopers or BX droids. Sorry if you were looking forward to running those units. I know we've already gotten some feedback in that direction, but hey, we're trying our best to recreate what would have been the physical experience of going to GenCon and attending what would have been a Continental. Obviously, this is just unofficial. We're doing our own thing, and we just want you all to come and be a part of it. And that said, unit legality, I think CAD and Padme are going to be legal. I think those are the only new things that are going to be around because those are coming out on Friday. If I'm not mistaken, Zach, do you know?
I'm going to pull another I'm Ron Burgundy. I don't know, of course, as none of us really do with FFG. But yeah, supposedly they are coming out on Friday, from what I understand. I know a lot of people got shipping notices. I know, Kyle, you're one of them, roughly 10 or 11 days ago. And that usually means it's a 2-week schedule. And with that, the date ended up being Friday, which is the 17th?
17th.
Yeah. So I think we're expecting them on Friday, and we should get them on Friday, which is a little bit early compared to how we've been getting things. But yeah, let's hope that's true because we want, it'd be nice to see them fall in the 11-day. Because with Invader League, we didn't get Cad Bane stuff in the mod for single eliminations, and it would be interesting to see Cad Bane be used in this platform if he were to get used, and see all of his cards, on full display.
Yeah, so that would be like a new meta thing, right? Because we haven't, like you said, we haven't really seen Cad Bane at his full potential yet. And we've also, only recently seen Staps. And we know the Staps are really strong, like the top CIS lists that made it in Invader League have Staps. And so this is maybe just another chance for them to do a repeat performance. So that'll be great. We are going. Sorry?
Staps aren't out.
Oh, so never mind. Duh. Never mind. Whoops. So scratch what I just said. There are no Staps in this tournament.
Hyde and Cassian are essentially new. Obviously they've been in Invader League, but yeah, since we've had like a real tournament, it's going to be Hyde, Cassian, Vital Assets, the AAT, Cad Bane, and Padme. So should be pretty interesting.
Should be great. Once again, August 1st and 2nd. We're going to be doing a lot of coverage of the event. If you cannot play, there will be plenty of ways for you to join in and watch. We have some giveaways that we will talk more about as we get closer to the event, either on this show or other Fifth Trooper medias. But you can catch the games all on the Fifth Trooper YouTube, on Dashes TV, twitch.tv/Dashes TV, or on twitch.tv/Yavin which is my channel. We're going to be providing a ton of coverage for the event if you cannot play. So please, come join us on that day, August 1st and 2nd, and we will see you there, I hope.
The prize support is going to be quote unquote off the chain.
Yeah.
That's Jay's quote. And we will also have not only prizes for people participating, but just random giveaways for people like watching the stream. So tune in, even if you're not playing. You might get some free stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is to try and make this, like you mentioned, David, as much as a real life event, and streaming is like a major part of that. And obviously prize support is another big part of that. And I'm like very interested to see how this goes, because this seems like an awesome time.
Yeah, I love the fact that there's just been so much. There's been like this outpouring of support for this event from the community. And I mean, it's really exciting that we're all just getting together. I think there's so much like pent up demand for a big event ever since Corona has been, affecting the ability to come together in a real, face to face and play tournaments like this. And so this is just, I think it's just a sign of it, right? Sign of the times.
Yeah, it's there's one spot left as of this recording, so by the time this goes live, it will probably be full.
So you can wait list though. You can I believe you can wish list tickets. You can get that. You can get on the wish list if someone drops it. Should add you in. There's going to be more information as we get closer to the event, of course. And so just stay tuned to Fifth Troopers Facebook, Legion Discord. We'll be dropping as much information as possible through those links, and of course through the GenCon messaging tool. As if you have an account on GenCon's website and are ticketed for the event, organizers can message you through there. That is how GenCon wants us to do information dispersal. But there's going to be some other things coming on down the line. So just keep your eyes peeled. Information will be coming.
I'm super excited. All right, let's move on to hobby.
Get out your brush and paint. It's hobby time.
So I've got some hobby topics, but I want to ask you guys first if you've done anything hobby related recently, or anything that you want to talk about.
I painted a single scout trooper, not a unit, a model.
Hey, that's something.
I'm not gonna lie. Mike moved close to his microphone, and I thought he was gonna emulate like the Bugs Bunny no meme. So I got very confused there for a second. He got real close. I was like, oh, he's just going in for a big no, which is what I'm doing, because it's a big no for me. It's funny. The drop says, pick up your brush and it's time to paint. I haven't painted a single thing in like a month, and I hate myself for it, mind you. But life's been so hectic that honestly, last night I allotted myself time. I'm like, I'm going to hobby, I'm going to paint. And then it was bedtime for the kid, and the kid didn't fall asleep till like 9:30. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not painting tonight because I got to get out the paint and I got to get the water and then I got to do this and pour the paint and I got to grab the models. And I'm just like, no, that hobby time I planned is not happening tonight. So I have nothing to contribute as far as it comes to hobby talk.
Julie's painting any walls? You got a new house, right?
I had my uncle do that because he's like a professional painter, and I'm just like, "Hey, Uncle Mike, you want to come over and hit these walls for me?" And he came right over and did them for me, and he did definitely a way better job than I could have. So,
Well,
so no.
I painted a lot of true metallic stuff because I'm painting other systems games. Sadly, sorry, Legion. I'm gonna get to you. I promise. I have Cassian and K2 put together, and I have R2 and 3PO put together, and they're my next things I'm gonna paint. But I've learned through many times doing this because I play sort of a what do you call it? It's the old world from Warhammer. It's all the dwarves and things, and they all wear metal. Like you basically have to love painting metallic stuff to play this faction and have a painted army. And I just have some small pieces of advice that I've picked up about using true metallic paint. A lot of really high level painters will say, no, just do non-metallic metal because it's better. But if you are using true metallics, you do need to water them down like a regular paint, but you need to use less water than normal because if you water it too much, the little flecks inside the paint get so spread out and it starts to separate a little bit, I find, if you use too much water. And then this applies to true metallics, and it also applies to like putting dark paints over a lighter primer. You really do need to watch where the head of your brush goes and make sure that you don't overlap too much. Because if you do get those little overlaps, the paint starts to really pile up in like one or two spots, and you get like kind of a, I don't know, it's not really a tide mark. It's just like an uneven application of the paint, right? Like it'll be darker in some spots, lighter in others, and you just hate having to go back and do the touch-up work. It's much better if you just get it right the first time. It saves you so much time and energy than having to go back and fix little things. And so, I mean, I just, my only piece of advice other than that is just really pay attention to where that brush tip is going. And I know it sounds really elementary, but it's just, it's really a matter of like how focused you are when you work. At least that's what I find difficult about it. If I'm not focused, there's just no hope for me when I paint.
So, this is how I do metallics, and let me know if you do the same thing. I have like a super lazy metallic approach. I'll do one of those metallic shiny metal paints. If you're doing silver, I use I think it's called gunmetal these days from Games Workshop.
Lead Belcher, maybe?
Lead Belcher, yeah.
That's it. Maybe I'm thinking of like a previous version of it. It was bolt gun metal. I actually have a pot of bolt gun metal still right here on my desk. That's the extra old version.
Yeah, the old school cred. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So I'll put that down, and then I will throw like a brown or black wash over it, depending on whether you want it to look like rusty or dingy. You use like a brown or like a brownish red wash, or if you want it to look cleaner, like a black wash. And then I just dry brush that same metallic color right over the top, and then you can also use like a silver, like a lighter metallic, and go right over it with the dry brush.
That's pretty close to what I do. I'm a greater and greater fan of gloss wash for metallics, because what happens when you use the sort of matte washes is that you lose the luster a little bit on the surfaces. And I find that the gloss wash kind of helps maintain that. And I mean, especially when you're painting what I'm painting, which is like these dwarves in armor kind of, this stuff never tarnishes according to the lore. So it has to be like the highest shine possible. So I go for the gloss wash. I go for layering it as high as I can. And I go for taking a bright silver edge highlight, even on the gold, because you just get that gleam rolling on it. It looks super nice. But I kind of follow what you do, Kyle, with it is I take like, kind of a dark, you go dark and paint up, right? That's kind of how it works, right? Because we're not painting something with a light source. We're painting something that is, sort of follows the normal rules of light, where it's dark in the recesses and bright on the high areas. So, I think we're in agreement on what you do, and dry brushing is an easy way to approach it. But I'm a stickler. I have to just have those little edge highlights of silver. It just makes such a huge difference.
Well, and when you're painting something shiny like dwarves, I feel like that's super important. I'm usually painting, just uh, like it's going to be something like Droidekas, right? Where if you want it to be rusty, or I played orcs in 40k, so it does not have to be super shiny.
Right. You're the scavenged metal people. We're the
Yeah.
we're the your armor isn't regulation people. you know.
Well,
Right. Exactly.
now all I'm envisioning is that C-3PO in A New Hope, when he's getting his oil bath in Tatooine, is that he's actually getting dipped in gloss Neln oil. So thanks for that imagery.
I mean, pretty much, right? Like that's kind of what he looks like when he comes out of the vat.
I mean, hold on. So before I started hobbying, I would have had no clue about that. But now that we're talking about it and you're discussing using it on gold paints, that's all I can imagine. That's just a big vat of gloss Neln oil.
Yeah, I love that. I'm I don't know whether I want to do it because I'd only use it for this one miniature, but I know I've seen some people do like this like chrome gold on their 3POs that is so nice looking, and it's just so cool. There's a lot of so much more I could learn about true metallic and painting with chrome and things like that. And so maybe I'll go do some research and report back next week when we do the segment again.
I have to admit, my favorite C-3PO was probably from Jeff of the Outriders, but he didn't actually do true metallic. What he did was he just found like a Rust-Oleum gold paint and applied like thin layers to make sure he didn't, because it's not meant for miniatures, obviously. So if you overspray it, it's not going to be great. And he just applied like thin layers, and it actually looked like what C-3PO looked like. I mean, I'm not saying that metallic paints can't get you there, but like that's my kind of method where I'm like, all right, well, we can just spray paint this and just put some oil on it. We're good.
Well, no, there's a whole section of the hobby, right, that's using these Rust-Oleum cans, and they're doing it pretty successfully, I have to say. So that doesn't surprise me that he uses the Rust-Oleum to do it like that. I've definitely heard of that method.
Man, I'd be so terrified. I've had so many bad experiences with spray can stuff. It's also super humid here in DC usually, so a spray can is like an extra level of risk.
Oh, I had it so easy before I moved to Florida. Now I'm like, oh, I gotta get up at 6 a.m. so I get the right humidity so I can spray without fear. And I'm like, oh, I gotta take a piece of test sprue and go test it and make sure it doesn't curl up on me before I actually paint the thing I want to really paint. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to shield yourself from the crisis of having a humidity creep up on your priming process.
Yeah.
You could also just prime inside with a spray hood and a airbrush if you have the money and time. But
Yeah, airbrush avoids all the checking the weather necessities of aerosols.
I have rattle canning, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of airbrushing, I got some more B1s done. I'm now halfway done. I have 3 full units done. I'm staring at my 60% done other 3 units. So it's been a journey. Even taking the lazy approach, which is essentially, I'm doing the bone white. So basically I airbrushed them, but I painted them black, and then I did that zenithal highlight, which basically means a top-down highlight. Top-down spray of white, and then spray them over with a tan color, and then throw a brown wash over them, and then dry brush them a lighter tan, and then dry brush them white, and that's it. And then paint the gun, and then I'm also doing a shoulder pattern for squad markings, which we'll talk about in a minute. One thing that I had a very weird experience. So there's a GW paint called Agrax Earthshade, and it's basically a brown wash. I held an old pot of Agrax Earthshade sitting on my painting desk that was 10% full. And these were the little ones. They come in big ones now, but it was a little one. So I'm there's no way that I have enough in here to do 50 B1s. So I ordered a new one, but I'm it's the same color. I can start on my first squad. So I started on my first unit, and I used the old pot, and they looked great. And then I got the new pot in the mail, and I did my second squad, and they looked awful. And I'm this is literally the same process. What's the problem? So I did a test one where I used the old pot, and then I used the new pot, and I did exactly the same thing on 2 separate models, and that was the difference. It was weird. The old pot was so much darker and like deeper and interesting looking than the new one, and yeah, so I can't figure out why, but I actually did have just enough wash in that old pot to do all 50 B1s, and now I've literally run out. So if I have to paint any more B1s, I'm going to be in trouble.
I mean, how old is this pot that you're using?
I mean, it could be 10 years old. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably has had enough time where like actual liquid in it has evaporated, so that like there's like more, like the density of the paint is higher. I would
Yeah,
bet.
the pigment. Well, and just looking at them, the pigment is deeper. It's like
Yeah.
a thicker wash. But it looked great, and I have no way to recreate it. Besides,
I mean, I bet you if you just like took some like chaos black and like mixed it in, like not a ton, like you could probably get the same effect.
yeah, I thought about you'd probably want to use like a brown instead of the
Yeah,
black.
I mean,
But
I
yeah,
don't
I feel
know.
you.
Like a
Do you
Rhinox
ever
hide or something.
Rhinox hide. Yeah.
do you ever pre-dilute your washes with medium? I know some people do that.
No, I actually thought about trying that too, just to make it go farther. So there's a paint you can buy from GW called, I think it's called Lamian Medium.
Yeah.
Yep, I've got
Um,
some right here.
yep, it is. Its uses are many. It's very different than just like diluting something with water, because diluting something with water will also dilute the pigment a little bit. Lamian Medium doesn't actually dilute the pigment; it just kind of makes your paint go farther. So whenever I'm doing any kind of blending, like mixing of colors, I'll add a little bit of Lamian Medium so it doesn't dry on the palette. There's a million other things you can do with it, but anyway, I wanted to talk about weathering because I tried some of this on my B1s. There's like some super easy weathering techniques that you can use that are really fast. So there are essentially like sponges you can actually buy just online for a couple bucks, like artist sponges, and but you can also use a lot of those foam cases come with like how you tear out like little square sections of the foam case to make um, this the essentially the size that you want for a particular mini. You can actually use those, and those work great also for this effect. So it's called stippling, but basically you take a paint that's like a chipping color. So for my B1s, which are brown, I used like a dark brown Rhinox hide. For rust, I used a redder brown. I forget what it's. Let's see, got it right here in front of me. Scrag brown for like a little bit of rust, and then I used gunmetal or whatever it's called these days, like a metallic. And you basically just dip the sponge or sponge section in. You kind of ball it up in your fingers. You dip it in the paint, and you kind of splotch it on a paper towel to get some of the extra paint off, and then you just like dab it on the model, kind of on the edges. And it's very easy to overdo this. So the first time you do it, just underdo it. But it basically creates like a chipping effect, like a super easy, quick, reasonably decent looking chipping effect. So I would try this on like a scratch model first, because you can, you should do this last after all your other stuff is done. You can totally ruin a model. I've done that with this if you overdo it. So try it on like a scratch model first. But I found it's a super easy way to just do some weathering. Makes it look like there's some chipping and stuff like that.
It's all an illusion. Like most painting is an illusion, right? So it goes on last, but your eye can't tell. So to your eye, it looks like the exposed metal under the paint job.
Right.
I essentially wanted to do this with my clones because, like, I know that clones are kind of supposed to be like battle tested, and I did it on a test model, and I've never done this technique because I'm still kind of new to painting, and I hated it so much I was like, I'm not going to do it. But it's something I'll probably circle back on because I'm just now like getting comfortable with my highlighting, and again, I've discussed this before in the podcast, like. I'm new to the highlighting. I feel like I'm getting better every time. So I feel like this is something I could definitely pick up on. But I need to do it when, like you're saying, like I need to do it when I feel comfortable doing it, because you can easily ruin a model by doing it, which I did. I was like, okay, I need to put another model together and prime that and paint that, and this one's just going in the trash. So it's definitely a technique, like you said, that kind of needs time to make sure you get it right. It's funny because like my Rebel Troopers, I look at them and I'm like, oh, these are good paint jobs. Then I painted my clones, and they're still not that great, but they're way better than my Rebels. So now I'm like meticulous. I'm like, I can't ruin a model. It needs to like fall in line. So I don't know if I'm ready for this sponge technique, but I'll get there eventually, I think.
Yeah, give it a shot. With a little practice, it's something that's really fast, and it's a good chipping effect. You can do some more complex chipping effects and with like an actual brush, but that takes a lot more time. And certainly, at least with me, with my 50B1s, I'm not doing that. So, let's talk about squad markings. So by that I mean having a way, and we can talk about whether and how clear that needs to be, because I want to get your guys' opinions on this. But basically, a way to associate each individual mini with a particular unit. So, how have you guys done that for yourselves personally, and why do you feel it's important? If it is important.
So with my Rebels, I painted each squad a different color. So like my Rebel Trooper jackets are different colors. They're like green, tan, like blue, red, and the rainbow army that I painted basically. I was like, yeah, this works. What I'm doing, and then I got clones, and I primed them all. And I'm like, all right, do I want to go with one uniform army, or do I want to go with squad markings on the shoulder pads and make every unit a different color? I ended up going for a uniform army, and I'm glad I did because I think it looks better as uniform army. But you still need to like I'm so adamant about marking squads because you can lose track so much during a game that I think it's like I don't want to say it's mandatory because I know a lot of people don't want to squad mark and they have certain techniques they want to do. That's fine, but this game is so like in depth that I think squad marking is important because especially with clones, like where you're cohering like in certain areas and you want to keep the space correct, that you could interchange squads and mix up models real quick. So what I did is I color the ring of the base. I know that I've had some times where if I'm behind some terrain, they can't tell what color is what, but it's easy because I know what they are. I can see them from my vantage point. I'd be like, these three are red and like these two are green or something like that. So I do rings. I do prefer shoulders like you're doing on your B1s. I think they look great, Kyle. And it's a great technique to do shoulders. I just wanted the uniform army, so that's what I rolled with.
So I did markings on my bases at first. I had all of them, the same scheme. They kind of all fit together in the same scheme. But I tried to do markings on the bases and it just wasn't working because when you're like, 2 hours into a game, it all starts to kind of blend together. And I would catch myself like, oh my gosh, how did this squad end up with 2 miniatures dead? Oh, well, I guess I removed the wrong minis. Well, I guess I can't go back now. I guess that squad's just going to have to live with these accidental casualties I just pulled. Obviously, that doesn't fly in tournament. I mean, Zach pretty much covered, what I'm going to do, and I just went with, like one squad is red, dark colors because they're light gray, and light gray is good because it goes with virtually any base color that you want. Mine are light gray and red, so red was a natural fit. Blue is okay as well. Purple, green, etc. My major concern with marking your squads is it affects the readability of the board. I've made comparisons to chess before. Last week I made one comparison. I'll make it again. In chess, you know whose pieces belong to whom and where they are. It's just very readable. Legion's a lot less readable when you have, 2 or 3 rebel trooper units in a clown car behind a barricade or something, So you need to actually figure out, what squads are which and who's gone. And it has to be accessible to both players. And it's never one direction. I figured, well, if I can't read the board, then it's an advantage to my opponent. Actually, it's a disadvantage to your opponent because your opponent pulls the wrong minis. So it's just you have to be. It's almost like a courtesy to the people that you're playing that your squads are clearly marked, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think specifically with the introduction of high impact like armies that like really care about positioning, like specifically relevance to each other, like you really have to mark your squads. Like clones like to be in a ball of 40 models that is like 6 inches wide, and you're fitting like 40 models in like a 6 inch by 6 inch like box, and you really need to know what's what, and if there's no way to distinguish between them, it's a problem. um so for starters, I think it's mandatory. That's
I
how I
think it
feel
should be
about it.
mandatory.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel a little bit less that way with like rebels and imperials. I think you can sort of get away with it, and I think it's okay. Like if you pull like a storm out of the wrong squad in like a casual game, it's like not gonna really matter. But when you're pulling like clone models and droid models off the board that are like specifically like this is the one guy in this one squad that is coherent so that you're in range of these other squads, whether that's to coordinate or share tokens, it becomes way more important. Um, and so I personally, I mark all my shoulder pads. Um, I don't actually think that there's a good way to do this, frankly. I think that we're like, there, we're dabbling in varying stages of bad. Um, I think there's actually only one way that I've seen that I've actually thought demonstrates squad markings clearly and fairly to both sides. Um, and I think it was Doug. Frankly, he put stickers on his bases.
Yeah, it's Doug.
Yeah, he didn't like actually base his models. He put like I don't even know what to call them. They're like these little dot stickers, and like he just put like, all right, there's a yellow sticker on this base, and there's a red sticker on that base, and there's a green sticker on that base, and it couldn't have been more clear. It was absolutely fantastic. Props to him for that. It's the thing about it is that like you don't model the base if you do that, right? So like it takes away a little bit from the artistic side of it. But I think from a gameplay standpoint, um, that method was fantastic.
Yeah, and you have to, it's tricky, right? Because you do have to strike a balance between it's a hobby game, right? So you want your dudes to look somewhat realistic, but it's also super important that you just get, that you get it right from a marking perspective and that it's obvious to both you and to your opponent. There's so many ways it's relevant. You've touched on them. Cover is another thing. Like you have to know which minis belong to which squad because you need at least half of your models to be in cover to get cover from a shot, and that goes both ways, right? Like your opponent needs to know which minis are in which squad so they can know how to flank that barricade, and if they can flank that barricade, so
Yeah,
um,
I was playing against a CIS player, right, and that's equally important, right? Not just for them getting cover. It's important for me to know if this is the squad I did 4 wounds to last round or not, so I can keep damaging that squad to eliminate it, not change targets to a different squad.
yep.
It has to be
Yeah,
visible at table distance too.
exactly. And that's a challenge because you're contrasting it with, you look at something like stormtroopers, right? Like if you're doing full cannon stormtroopers, like stormtroopers all look the same. That's the point of being a stormtrooper, right? So, if you want to do that, is your option like stickers on the base or um, color in the bases? If there's a tournament requirement for that, then I guess that those are essentially your options. Like you said, I think with stormtroopers you can. It's not as important if you make like a concerted effort to keep them separately grouped. But I feel like in the chaos of a game, even with stormtroopers and rebel troopers and other units like that, it's inevitable that they just get mixed up. I have not seen tournaments actually require squad markings, with the exception, oddly enough, of Nova Open. Nova Open is the only tournament I'm aware of that actually required squad markings, and interestingly, it did not require painted models or a 3-color minimum. It's only like hobby or painting related requirement was that each mini, it'd be clear which squad that belonged to, and they were basically like, use a sticker, you know, if you want to go the Doug method, use a sticker. And Nova Open at least considered that even more important than having your models painted. Period. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think probably it should be at some point both 3-color minimum and mini by mini squad marking required. It will be interesting to see what happens whenever our next convention is, whether it's LVO next year or Adepticon or whatever. But those will be the first like significantly sized in-person tournaments with the new factions being represented. And if they don't have if they don't have squad marking requirements, I'm going to be super curious to see how that goes. I think most people do this anyway, so in practice maybe it's not an issue, but besides the methods we've mentioned, you can also I've seen people do like colored lines on the bases if you don't want to color like the entire base. Shoulder pads is super common. There's a million actually, like in canon, just for droids, there's a million in canon droid schemes that use some kind of marking somewhere on the droid. I went with the across the shoulders. I've seen like the head markings. Same for clones. There's a ton of clone regiments that have some kind of like colored marking on them. So
I forget where I've seen it, but I've seen rubber bands be used. I've seen like highlighter colored like rubber bands. You put them like so you can paint your model exactly how you want. You can keep it all like together, and then you get like different color rubber bands and you put them around the model like on their base like area. I forget where I've seen it though. It might have been, honestly, it's probably on like the Facebook at this point. But I know I've seen rubber bands be used. Like it's like similar to the stickers.
Like around the base or around the legs?
Like around the legs. So like you get like small little like elastic bands. Yeah. Put them around the model. Have them like they dangle, like they're not tight, but they dangle a little bit, and they're all different colors, and you can somewhat differentiate them that way. Granted, I don't know where you would get a lot of different colored rubber bands, but I've seen it done. So
that seems like that would be uglier than the stickers, but that's just me.
Listen, I didn't say it was gonna be pretty. But it works. It is a functional thing that I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million different ways to do it. I think it should be mandatory. There are ways to hobby it in there. But all right, any other hobby thoughts? All right, let's move on to our tactics topic.
Get ready for advanced tactics.
So our topic for today is knowing your own list, and then also knowing your opponent's list and what to do if you don't know your opponent's list. So let's start with the first thing. How important would you say it is to know your own list? And how do you do that?
It's high, very high. So somebody actually asked me in a private Discord the other day. They're like, the ROG is huge, like it's like 80 pages. This feels overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And I was like, well, why don't you just look up the keywords that are on your units? And I think for this conversation that's a good place to start. Before you play a game, I mean, like, I would say that the average army has somewhere in the realm of 10 to 20 keywords on all of its units. Some are shared, ish. I guess Rebel Troopers only have like Nimble, right? Some of the more specialized units have 3 or 4. Some of the so But I think that if you just look up the keywords that are on your unit cards and on your upgrade cards in your army and on your command cards, that's probably where you should start in this conversation. And you should go through the RG and you should read those specific entries and make sure you understand those things. That's where I'd start, at least.
I would say that that's definitely a good start. And the other thing I would recommend is to play the same list over and over. Now, I'm not saying it needs to be the exact same list, but let's say you're playing like a Cassian Luke list or something like that, right? Try, and you're going to change the upgrades that you have on each unit, say, throughout the games. That's fine. But as long as you're playing with somewhat similar idea of the list and you play that list over and over, and it's something we've talked about before, but muscle memory is so important when playing Legion. When you can do things without even thinking about them, you become a better player just because you don't actually have to think. And a lot of Legion is thinking, mind you, like, but you can at least take your thoughts and put them towards something else rather than overthinking because you need to think about what your unit does at the same time. You can basically take the mental space in your mind and allot it to something more important, which is understanding the battlefield. So getting those reps in and playing as many games as you can with the same list and getting and building that muscle memory up is absolutely vital to your success at playing Legion, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we stress that a lot, but just like even if your list doesn't work or you don't feel like it works the first time you play it, just do it again. Like maybe you had a bad draw, on your battle cards or something that just contributed to a poor performance with the list, and it's really not a bad list. But it's important to do it more than once. A, so you can determine that. But B, I don't know about you guys, but every time I play a list, I get better with that list.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing. We've been quarantined for a while now, so I've been playing a lot of StarCraft. And I think to your guys' point, unlike in our game where you play with a list, in StarCraft you kind of play with what they call a build, which is a specific order in which you do things. Which is, you can kind of break down a list in that fashion too. Like it does certain things at certain times, and the first time you execute a build in StarCraft, generally it goes really badly because you've never done it before, and uh, you're not efficient at what you're doing. You are being indecisive about what you're doing, and like situations are coming up that you didn't plan for. And so when you're opening it up with a list you've played for the first time, like let's just like even before you get into the game, you've got to go through this whole turn zero deal with picking battle cards and all this. Like so many things can go wrong so quickly that unless you get reps in with this list or this build order, like you're just never gonna nail it. And it's gonna take 10, 15 games with a list to really have a good idea of what you want to do at every specific juncture, and even then you're going to make wrong decisions. I make wrong decisions all the time still, like I've been playing this Arc Star list in Invader League for the better part of 2.5 months. I've played probably 30 games. I definitely still make mistakes in some matchups, and I'm unsure at certain junctures of games. um, and that's just part of learning the list or the build order and how it works. And every time you play it again, you learn a little bit more about things that you did wrong, and you get more efficient at it and you get better at it. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that I think reps are important.
Yeah, I mean, to bounce off of that, and it feels like 25 years ago since I won the RPQ that I won last July, but it hasn't even been a year. Um, but to like bounce off of that, I was playing Luke Sabine, and I was playing probably upwards of like 4 games a week in preparation for that RPQ. And every time I played that list, I would tinker with it and I would say, what makes it better? What does this? What does that? And by the time I got to that RPQ, I felt very confident that I was bringing the best potential list for my personal play style based on like the 20 to 30 games that I played in preparation. And had I not done those 20 to 30 games of preparation, there's absolutely no way I win that RPQ. And, again, it's just so vital for those reps.
So I think addressing this topic, there's like two levels of it. One is like if you're like really new, like do what Mike said, which is just get familiar with your army's keywords, right? Get familiar with your weapon ranges. Get familiar with the dice pools that you're going to need to toss out there. Memorize what you can. Sometimes you just need to refer to the card. I know that like when you want to play quickly, having a good idea of what the common dice pools of your list are is a good thing. So like for example, when I was playing Rebel Z6, I knew that I would need 4 black dice and 6 white dice all the time, and I just had those dice pools handy. But to address the original question, right, the importance of knowing your list, hugely important. How you know your list, if you're new, figure out what your keywords are, what your dice pools are. If you're less new and you're trying to figure out like specific like interactions or trying to figure out what the smoothnesses are, what are the wrinkles in this list. And when I say like smooth and wrinkly, it's like there are some procedures that are just this feels right, and there are other procedures that this feels wrong or this feels haphazard or disorganized. The feeling right will come with repetition, but sometimes that feeling doesn't come, and then you might need to change something up. But yeah, those are like ways to know your list and figuring out like what role do these units play, and like what do these characters have to do. Like for example, Luke Skywalker, great example. If he doesn't do something dramatic, generally speaking, he's not earning his keep, right? He's not doing the thing he was designed to do in the list, and he's not functioning at maximum efficiency. I know that Kyle doesn't always agree with me when I say that because Kyle is a very defensive player and Luke's mere presence can get something accomplished. That's also true, but that's for someone who's way more advanced than we're speaking to right now. But yeah, I mean, you just have to sort of look at what your units do and what are they doing on the table after the game is over, and have a memory of the events of the game. When I was first starting out, I never could remember what had transpired. I just knew that I lost. But you just have to develop a memory of the turn and like, you have to actually train that recall at some point to really start analyzing what's going on.
I think it's a good idea to actually like keep a journal when you're training with a list, especially when you're doing with a list that a list or a faction, say that you're trying for the first time. Like take notes. If you're like playing in a tournament, you're not allowed to take notes live during a tournament. But if you're training with a list, you're probably not playing that list for the first time in a tournament. So, like in practice games or in your local games, like bring a notepad with you and write stuff down as it happens. I've also found that can help to kind of divorce the impact of luck versus decisions. Because, after a game, all your brain remembers is the outcome. And there's 2 components to that outcome, right? There's your decisions and there's luck, both good and bad, right? Like you can have a bad decision covered up by good luck and a good decision thwarted by bad luck. And you need to isolate the decision component of that and separate out the luck. And I feel like that's much easier to do if you're, keeping some kind of, whether it's mentally or like a physical written journal of the game as it transpires.
I can definitely agree with that. I kept a written journal before LVO 2019, and that helped me tremendously, earning an invite off of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think writing stuff down is a really great way to prepare, but I think it kind of points to maybe even a larger issue for newer players. Like, I'm not going to tell like somebody that's new to the game, keep a written journal. But what I will say is that like make sure you have a game plan. Like just a basic game plan. I whether that's if you're playing your first few games with a list and you're playing with a force user in it, like my game plan is to make sure that Luke is in melee by turn 4. And I'm not encouraging this at like a high level tournament play, but like you should just have a game plan and try and execute it. And when that game plan doesn't work, you need to ask yourself why, right? Like my game plan was to make sure that Luke, got into melee by turn 4. It didn't go well. Why didn't it go well? Well, Luke got shot. Okay, great. Luke got shot. Why did Luke get shot? I didn't hide him well enough. Is that my issue, or is that because it's hard to hide Luke generally? And you start learning things about the game over the course of going through this process, right? Like you'll newsflash undoubtedly learn that you cannot force a force user into melee without having them be vulnerable. It's not a thing in this game against a good player, and you'll learn that over the course of time. But if you put together a game plan, not caring if it's going to work or not beforehand, and stick to it, you will then start learning things that you can and cannot do based on evaluating whether that game plan was successful, right? My game plan is going to be to drop Cassian or Jin on the middle box during recover and run away with it. Let me see it. I'm going to try that 5 or 6 times and see if it works. You're inevitably going to find out that the answer is no, it doesn't. But you've got to kind of go through that process. And those are some very topical, basic game plans. But like you can do that in any circumstance with any list.
Totally. You just basically go with plan A. You don't even think about B, C, or D, and play as many games with plan A, and then you'll start thinking about plans B, C, or D in your next games. That happened to me. Like I played a couple games against Kyle when I first started playing Legion, and he walloped me. But I learned from both of those games. Like I specifically wanted to play Kyle knowing he would kick my ass, right? And this is before I was even like quote unquote competitive. Okay. I made competitive lists, but I had no like idea what the heck I was doing. But playing those 2 games with Kyle kind of catapulted me into understanding the game at a deeper level. And, it's those experiences that will make you a better player.
You have to be a little bit of a masochist because in order to improve, you need to seek out people to kick your ass on the regular because they'll show you where the flaws in your game are.
Well, and we talked, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, about practice partners. And, one of the things that's important about a practice partner is you find someone that's, of similar or better skill level than you. And I think that's super, that's a little off topic from knowing a list, but as far as getting reps in, I think that's super important. So knowing your own list obviously is very important, and it's something you have more control over than the second thing, which is knowing your opponent's list. So how important would you say that is? And if you roll up to a matchup and your opponent throws something on the table and you have no idea what it does or how it works, how do you handle that?
It's a layered question. Not to interrupt you, Mike.
Question.
It is layered. The easiest thing that I'll say, and then I'll let you go to it, Mike, is that you kind of need to understand the archetype it is. I think if you understand the archetype that it is, you can somewhat form a game plan and then build from there. And if you don't know the units that you're playing against, you ask the important questions like, what did they do? What's their range? And what are like the important keywords like Pierce say? Something we didn't brush upon on the knowing your list. And maybe it's honestly maybe more important knowing your opponent's list is the range threat and understanding your distances. But anyways, Mike, what were you going to get at there?
I was gonna say that I think that it's actually pretty simple. If you're playing this game and you don't know what your opponent's list is, that means you're not super well versed in this game. That's fine. There's like 3 things you need to like topically identify when you sit down across the table from someone. First, every list is base threat range 3, unless it's an Imperial list, then it's range 4. Like, just keep that in mind. Those are like, that's the engagement range. There are exceptions to that, but that is kind of rule of thumb number 1. The second is there a lightsaber in their list? If the answer is no, great. Don't worry about it. Like, you can just like look at the board and see if they have a lightsaber, right? Like, you don't need to look at a card. Dooku's going to be wielding his little lightsaber, or Luke's going to have it out, or Vader's going to have it out. You're going to see it in play, and you need to identify, okay, that's a unit I want to stay away from. End of story, right? And the last thing I think that is really important is, did your opponent put a tank on the other side of the battlefield? If the answer is yes, and you don't have impact in your list, don't shoot it. And I think those 3 things, topically, like, if you kind of just like roll with that and understand how those things work, you'll be fine most of the time. Like, there are going to be moments where you get shredded by a command card that you don't know. But if you don't know the command card going into the game, like, there's nothing that you can really do to fix that, because your opponent's not going to be like, hey, here's my command hand. It's secret information, right? So I think if, in my world, if you don't know what your opponent's list is doing, that's where I start.
Well, and if you're just playing like a friendly game at your local store, the biggest thing is just ask. Like, don't be afraid to ask. Like, hey, what does this unit do? What should I watch out for with this unit? Like, if I'm playing someone at my local game store, I'm happy to be like, hey, this is Emperor Palpatine. If you get close to him, he's gonna fry you with lightning. Like, that's what's gonna happen. So like, just ask your opponent if you don't know. Maybe if you're playing like in a tournament, they may react to that question a little differently than if you're at a local store, but you can still ask.
Yeah, totally.
Ultimately, like, every game, even a competitive tournament level game, is about a social contract. Like, we are playing a social game, and like, don't be afraid to just ask questions of your opponent.
I think that that's important, but I also like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, the chances are that if you don't know what your opponent is putting across from the table from you, like, the answers to those questions may not be insanely helpful, right? Like, they're gonna be like, oh, I have this like unit that's gonna infiltrate and like do all this crazy stuff, and as like a new player, I don't know, I'm not sure that that's super helpful, and I think that you should just have guidelines for yourself mostly. Like, there's going to be things in the game that break the rules, and you're going to learn from that. But if you don't know what the stuff does ahead of time, I think, and I'm not saying don't ask your opponent what your stuff does, but I am saying that I would imagine that if you don't know the rules, the answers to those questions will be pretty unhelpful.
Clones break the rules. Is that what you're getting at?
No, I mean, like, the thing about it is, like, everything in the game inherently breaks the rules, and the rules are being broken in so many different, like, that's the point of the rules, is that they break other rules, right?
Yeah, like that's it's an FFG thing. You set up a system, and then the strong things are those things that break the system, right?
And that's fine. That's cool. It's just like, it's hard to keep track of all of those things if you don't know if you don't know what they are and you're learning it on the fly, right? Like, yeah.
And when we talk about breaking the rules, we're not talking about that as like necessarily a bad thing. That's literally what abilities do. An ability like jump, which lets you ignore terrain, is something that breaks the rules, right? Luke has jump. He can jump over terrain. Normally, units can't jump over terrain. He's breaking the rules, right?
Yeah, I'm certainly not implying that people are cheating. Just
No.
No.
Yeah, no, totally. But I feel like that phrase has like a connotation to it that's negative. But we're just talking about units that have abilities. And those abilities, the reason that there's a keyword for jump and a keyword for charge is that like units can't normally do those things, right? So all we're talking about is like abilities that let you operate in ways that you wouldn't normally be able to operate.
Yeah, I mean, like, the normal rule set for Legion is like really like maybe 3 pages before you get into all the stuff that that changes it, right?
Yep.
Like the 80 pages is for all of the stuff that modifies the rules to some extent, and unless you're like a high level tournament player, you know, I mean, I think we could pretty much almost verbatim quote out like RRG entries for like charge and pierce and stuff like that. But like the average player is not going to be able to do that.
It's getting harder the bigger the rules reference gets, actually.
You beat me to it. I was just gonna say, like, and you know what? Maybe it is a lack of playing physical games that makes learning the RRG like it used to be. But like, I was a judge at LVO, which was in January. It was only 6 months ago. Again, feels like 35 years ago. And I like kind of like knew the RRG verbatim. And maybe it's the newer units coming out in the past 6 months or so, or units that aren't technically out, but we're playing them on TTS. And maybe it's that's causing this for me. I feel like I'm losing grip on the RRG, and that's fine. Like, and I'm trying to make this as like a learning thing. I'm a very well versed player in this game, just like all of us are, and even I struggle sometimes with the RRG, and that's okay. Like, I don't need to know it word for word. Um, it's getting harder, like you said, David. If or at least it feels like it's harder. Um, I think that I'll get to the point where I'm starting to understand the problems that I have with the RRG, like things that I'm not remembering like off the top of my head. Um, like there's certain interactions with newer keywords that are kind of tough to figure out. Like incognito, great keyword on K2, but it's kind of hard to understand the rules reference guide entry for it at certain things. And that's not a problem with the rules. It's just playing them out. You're like, oh wait, I don't know if I know that for sure. And I go to the rules reference. Like, you can play this game a million times and there's going to be a point in the game where you're like, I'm going to go look at the rules reference. And that's okay. That's what I'm basically getting at. Like, you don't need to know every single thing in this game. It's almost impossible to know every single thing in this game. And that is okay.
Incognito, that's the one where you have a suppression token. You can't be shot, right?
No, that's inconspicuous.
I think Kyle's trying to make a point, but
Yeah.
I do think that like you should. I find it very helpful to have a printed copy of the current RRG like with me when I play. Clearly, it is available digitally. You can download it on your phone. I find that less helpful to me, so I guess pick your poison. I guess it wouldn't be so bad if I had it on a tablet. My phone is really bad, so maybe that's the issue. But yeah, I mean, like, don't be afraid to look stuff up. Competitive players do it all the time.
Well, and if you're at an event, call a judge. But like,
Yeah.
if you're just playing at your local store, yeah, bring that binder, make a binder, bring it with you. Like, I'm not gonna if I'm playing across from someone and they want to open the RRG and look something up, I'm not gonna fault them for it. That's so. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to look it up. As you get reps, it'll become easier. But
I mean,
yeah, I still have stuff that I need to look up.
I was gonna say, admittedly, I don't know the vehicle brake rules. I look those up every time.
Yeah, every single time.
Every single time.
Yeah,
Really?
roll damage dice. Oh, block. Wait, which one is that? I don't know.
Every time. I get it wrong every time too. I'm like, oh, blank. I think that is suppressed. You have to roll a dice, and I look it up. Oh no, it's broken. It has to move twice if it wants to move. And I'm just like, oh, I got that wrong for the 90th time.
You should
I mean,
play vehicles more often, man.
I mean, I think I know them better.
That's true.
And I'll be honest, I played a game, Mike, with you last week where I played clones for the first time, and you literally had to remind me that I could get to get my aim token for rest for tactical on turn 0.
Literally putting tactical tokens on the board for him.
Yeah.
He's just moving his units, and I was like, "No, dude, you get free aim tokens."
It's like vital to the clone army, Kyle. Come on.
Yeah, I was like, really? That's amazing. I mean, of course, obviously, I know that that's like a thing that they do, right? I've played against plenty of clones, but having done it myself, I'm just used to dropping units on the table. So I dropped Rex down, right? And then I moved on.
I was like, clearly your intent was to scout there, even if it was staying in your deployment zone, right? And he was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, you trigger tactical, right?"
He's just not used to the acceleration on that beamer. He's just not quite familiar with it yet.
It's funny because I think he said something to the effect of, I don't think I've ever felt like I've been played with a Lamborghini before, but
exactly
this is what that must feel like.
Yeah, exactly.
I think something's busted when it has that Ferrari feel to it.
Yeah, why didn't someone tell me I've been driving a moped? Kind of how I felt after that game.
Well, I play BX droids in Invader League with offensive push, and I got tactical, but I'm not used to doing it with every single move.
Yeah, right. I mean, Cassian is tactical.
I don't have to choose if you're moving and shooting? What is this witchcraft?
Yeah, all right. Somehow this turned into a gripe about clones.
I'm not great, just to be clear.
Yeah. So speaking of, why don't we go ahead and end this knowing your army section? When are these semifinal games from Vader League happening? I mean, you're in one of them, Mike.
I am in one of them. So hold up. Let me open Single Limbs chat because we've been talking about it in there. I believe Garn and Luke Cook are playing Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Saturday, I think, actually.
What was it, Saturday?
Oh, wait, hold on.
It says Sunday in here.
Oh,
unless they changed it.
Got my days mixed up.
I think R1 is maybe streaming it. I'm not sure if we've got a confirmation on that. I have not actually scheduled my game with Kingsley yet. We're sort of feeling out Friday. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Arcstar versus Arcstar.
Yeah. There will be an Arcstar list in the finals of Invader League. It's just a question. And markedly enough, it's possible that Arcstar literally has a 100% win record in non-mirror matchups at the end of this, even though there were 2 Arcstars.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, if the Arcstar list wins the final.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Arcstar will have lost, but the only thing that it lost to was also an Arcstar.
Right.
And I'm stealing a line from my blog coming up this week. We need to come up with better names for these lists. Jeez.
Yo, I came up with that
name.
I thought it was amazing.
Listen,
I thought it was beautiful.
Mike, I love you, okay? I love Mondays. I love talking to you guys like nonstop, okay? Arcstar, Rexstar, terrible names. Awful. Like, awful. I mean, I should probably try and coin something else, but it's just not going to stick because everyone's just going to still call it by these bad names like Crisscross for like Luke and Sabine, which I did not accept that for when I was playing that list. Awful name. It's terrible.
What about Jump 2 Electric Boogaloo? That's my favorite.
I like that one.
I love that one. Okay. I don't know why that didn't catch on. Maybe because it was just so hard to type out. I don't know what it is. But Rexstar, Arcstar, it makes me just like, I look at him just like, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Make you nauseous?
Was that?
Make you nauseous a little bit?
No, not as bad as Crisscross. Crisscross made me nauseous. Like, it definitely like made me want to puke.
I was just gonna say, like, that's what the list is supposed to do.
I fear no one. Okay, I fear no one except for the name. I fear the name because it's terrible. But I don't actually fear the list. Okay.
You got to come up with a better name if you hate the name.
I actually think that the names, like, while they might be air quotes bad, like, kind of represent the lethal efficiency and oppressiveness that they bring with them.
Lethal efficiency. I see what you did there.
I mean, it's a Death Star. That's like a gaming term, except it has Rex or it has arcs in it. That seems like a very natural naming convention.
I don't understand what the problem is.
I've only played Legion, so is this really like a term that's been used in gaming, like the Death Star? Is this a normal thing? Because when I think Death Star, I think single reactor ignition, and you just see Jeddah City or Scarif Beach just get blown to smithereens. So I just don't correlate the two.
It's a gaming term.
It's normally like a ball of like 3 squads of assault terminators.
It's a ball of elite units.
Yeah.
Okay, it fits. It still stinks. How's that?
I mean, they're also called death balls. We could call them Arc Ball and Rex Ball.
It's even worse.
That's
even worse.
Mainly because Death Star, like, the idea of a Death Star is like way more on theme in this game than it is in like 40K, right?
I mean, you could just call it Blizzard because there's 5 copies of Overwatch.
That's actually pretty good. I like that.
I like that way more. I like that way more.
Yeah, but like you have to think about that. I don't know.
Yeah. It doesn't roll off the tongue. Arc balls. I don't know.
balls. I'm gonna start calling them arc balls. I mean, you do have 2 full arcs in it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like it's definitely a fair. Like it's not like you don't know what you're playing against when somebody tells you.
Just saying, you got like a pair of full arcs in that list.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
All
right.
We're gonna start
Scouting
calling
party
arc
to
balls.
teabag
Oh, no.
your opponent.
They're really big units too. You know. I don't know.
Massive, absolutely massive.
All right, we're going off the rails. Let's close this out. Anything to
Those
plug
surge
before
tokens let you stay alive for a while. You know.
Oh
They
yeah.
do. Yep.
Oh man, I learned that the hard way when I played Phase 1s the other night.
Zach, you wanna plug Kodak's new adventure here?
Yeah, so my buddy Rich, local to me, Kodak, is starting a Twitch channel to kind of teach Legion while playing games. This Friday night at 9:00 Eastern, he's gonna have a game featured with Cirillo, Mike Cirillo from the 5th Trooper, and Nick Bodner, who was part of one of the spotlight videos that we've been doing on the 5th Trooper YouTube. You can check that out. That is the Legion University.
It's on Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. That should be fun. So they're basically like doing list building challenges, right?
Yeah, so this first week, I believe that he is forcing them to make a list with 6 different heavy weapons in your core units. So you have to bring 6 core to start with, and you have to use 6 different heavy weapons, if I'm not mistaken. My challenge I'm playing next week against Keegan Evans, and our challenge, which is kind of wild, is that every unit that we put in our army, we have to use every single upgrade in it. So, like, whatever upgrade there is, heavy weapon, personnel, grenades, I'm drawing blanks. I'm pulling a Kyle here with my waffling, but whatever it's got,
Training
slots, gear slots, you have to have it completely filled out. So basically it's going to be like a 7-act, or like, actually I somehow got a 9-act rebel list together. It's going to be a low activation, like weird jank type of situation that he's trying to force on the players to kind of play differently. And he's just trying to make a different stream every week.
So I thought it was hilarious when you said they had to bring 6 different heavy weapons in their core units. Kyle just kind of like cocked his head sideways, and I think he broke a little bit. he was like, "What do you mean? I don't understand." Like, I mean, clearly, that's a thing you can do, but
It's like triple the number you normally bring, right?
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, it's like 6 times the number you normally bring in a lot of lists.
Yeah, Mike and I only know Z6 lately.
Speaking of programming failures, we forgot to mention we need your help building our Legion units for us. There was some spitballing done on our last cast. Let's go ahead and do like specific assignments per week, right? We got enough time to do that.
Yeah.
Most people seem to agree I would be some kind of tactical droid. So, but yeah, just a reminder, it's me, Kyle, Separatists, Zach, Clones, Mike, Empire, and David, Rebels. So, let's figure out which person to do this week, and then we'll spend we'll do one every week. Yeah. All right. So, we are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Kyle.
I'm Mike.
I'm David.
I'm Zach Balls.
We'll see you next week.